So cooperative care is what it sounds like. It is about your dog cooperating and consenting to the kind of care that you would be giving them, such as nail trims, eye drops, handling. So if you're at a vet's office, oh, you found the treats, I know. Anything that has to do with us touching our dog, poking our dog, prodding our dog, dropping things in their eyes, ears, grooming.
Teaching a consent cue.
So the first thing that I teach in cooperative care is going to be what's called a consent cue. In fact, the dog is going to teach me what that cue is. Most dogs will look away as their form of saying, I don't have consent. First thing I can probably do is I'm going to ask her for something she already does know that's incompatible with jumping. Sit. Yes. This right here, this action of her looking at the food, she's going to learn is her way of saying yes. But when I went to pet her, she looked away from it. That's her way of saying no. Very simple. If she keeps looking, I would pet. But she turns her head, I stop petting. And this is part of the learning process here. So she learned no consent. Consent. So I'm going to give her that treat for the petting process. I use petting because it doesn't involve a tool to explain this, but this would also be if you had a tool in your hand. We're going to be bringing out the nail filer pretty soon. So I'm going to keep going over this so she can learn that every time that she turns away, she's going to say no consent. But that time she gave consent, that means she gets something good. I stop, consent, she gets the treat for it. Some other really common no consent is tool touching paw when you're holding it, then pulling paw away. So that's something to look for when we're actually beginning to use the dremel on the paw.
Okay.
Perfect.
If your dog is scared of the tool itself.
If at any point your dog or with another tool, like say she's really cool with this tool but she has a bad experience with another one, the easiest step in general, not having the tool attached to yourself, leaving the tool out, Hazel, leaving the tool out, any engagement on the tool, yes, marking yes. Now obviously she's really comfortable with it, so if this was like something she was fearful of, she'd probably investigate it from afar. She'd probably stick back and look at it like this. I'd be marking that engagement. The minute she goes in, I'd be marking yes and rewarding that engagement.
The tool touching your dog's body. Conditioning.
So for the dremel's sake, yeah, I like that you're exploring it. This becomes that focus. If the dremel comes in close and she looks away, I take it away. Consent to have the dremel near her. When she turns away, looks at it, that's her no consent. Consent, no consent. No consent. And what I do have is I have about 5 or 6 treats in my hand, so that way it's not that she's just being forced into, well, if I just put up with this long enough, I get the treat. There's a couple treats in here. I give them out as I go. Good, get that one, yeah. No consent. I'll put this back in front of her. Consent, consent, no consent. Consent, bringing it towards a different part of her body. For example, the part of her body, no consent. Part of her body that I'd be using this on would be her paws, no consent. Consent, no consent. Consent, consent.
Conditioning the sound of the tool.
So because this tool makes a weird sound, unlike something like eye drops or a brush, we're going to start introducing sound, which is something that you've already previously worked on a little bit, so I want to take that into consideration.
During her feeding process a little bit, she didn't care too much for it, but it was outside of feeding, she was not having it.
Yeah, so, and that kind of is it's an important part of this, is that the food is something good that's happening alongside of it. I still use food with my dogs when I do their nails. I just need both hands, and that's where something like the lick mat comes into play.
Yeah.
So anytime there is a sound associated, I want to put it away from the dog. Yes! And she's still giving consent. Her ears are picking up a little bit more. And I'm using just small amounts of sound. In fact, she's still continuing to give consent. She's not showing concern on the, there we go. So I stop it right when she looks at it. Consent. Consent. And I'm beginning to build up time with the sound. And turning it off when she looks at it.
Paw handling.
So we've got her introduced to both the tool coming near her foot, and the sound of the tool. Now, dremels are special because there's so many little steps involved. Something like brushing her is pretty much as simple as consent cue, touch, and then building time with how long you're stroking and where you're stroking her with the brush. Unfortunately, this has all these little things in between, and that's why we're focusing on this. Hazel, come here, baby girl. And so at this point, she's comfortable with the tool. The tool can actually be put aside up here. And I want to work on some paw handling skills. So the first question I ask everyone is, does your dog know shake?
Not yet.
Okay.
We've tried.
This is going to depend on how much your dog uses a paw. Your dog uses their paw. What happened there, and I'll put her at this angle for you, is the treat was in my hand. She couldn't get it by nuzzling, so she tried pawing at it. Sit is an easier position for them to paw. Yes! And I'm just marking yes and opening my hand every time she gives me that paw. So even though this is one of the oldest tricks in the book, it's so useful for cooperative care, anything to do with paws. I'm going to let her sniff, sniff, sniff as she brings up that paw. Yes! And I'm gonna hold it and begin to rub it. If she pulls away, that is her no consent cue.
Yes. Keep going.
Keep going.
Yes. Uh-oh. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Tool with vibration and sound touching your dog's paw.
All right, so here's the great part for her. This is a lick mat. This is going to give you both of your hands during the next couple steps. So I am going to start off with a little bit of a warm up to let her hear that this is present. And I'm also going to have it close to her. She looks at it, that's no consent. She looks at that, licks at that, that is consent. And what we aim in this step to accomplish is having the sound on because there's a slight vibration. And I'm not going to touch her paw with this side. I'm going to begin to touch her paw with the back side. So this is full consent.
Not care.
She looks, and I take it away. But the next step, no more dremel. She's licking. I'm going to get her used to me kind of picking up her paw.
Putting it all together.
And the fact that she keeps going back. At no point has she run away, tail tucked, whimpered. No signs of distress have happened during any of this.
Should I touch the paw now?
Sure.
Oh, never mind.
No consent. No consent. But you did get consent beforehand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, I think she's still going on this.
She is. And with the progress that you've been able to make with other things, I don't see this being a problem whatsoever. And each time that she does that no consent, do you notice how the next time is longer, the consent?
Yeah. Okay.
All right, you're
Okay.
done.
Hey, that doesn't belong to
Good
you.
job, you did it! Because what you would be doing is a combination of that noise up against her paw with her nail, pushing out that nail and trimming. She's not ready for that. She really moved away. I'm gonna stop with that one. In fact, what I would be working towards as your goal would be any combination of touching, noise, this touching, no noise, anything that can desensitize her to what all of this put together creates.
Ways to avoid adverse reactions from the tool.
I want to let you know ahead of time that the dremel can be adverse in other ways that we have a little less control over. So one of the first things the dremel can do is it can catch on your dog's fur around the nail itself. I don't want to push this too far with her, but I will show you at a later time how to pull out the nail. You basically push on the toe down like that. She's had a long day. I'm gonna let her have a break. And the reason why is that kind of clears the way for less opportunities for that fur to get caught in there. The second part of the dremel that not a lot of people take into account is that if it is a metal dremel, which most dog filers or dremels are, metal heats up rather fast. And so on the box it says use for 5 seconds at a time. Now the reason for that, 5 seconds and then you can check to make sure how much you've taken off is great. The other reason is over 5 seconds, that warmth from the metal can go up, they can feel it, and that can be uncomfortable and give them reason to find it adverse. The other thing I want to warn you about is just like us, dogs have a range of sensitivity. Some dogs find it really ticklish. Some dogs don't give it. My dog, for instance, loves handling on her paws. One of my dogs just does not care. I could do all the feathery kind of movements. She doesn't flinch. And that's how I know she's not that sensitive to it. But for a dog who, if you begin to kind of, apply some kind of light feathery feeling to, if she starts pulling away, your dog's gonna be a bit more ticklish. So take that into consideration. That just means that each step happens a little bit slower than, filing through all the nails. Like we said earlier, that might be the kind of dog that you just one nail out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, check, let her drop her paw, let her go do something,
Right.
Get back to it in 2 minutes. She comes back over, hey, what are you doing? You had the treats on you, second nail, that way there's less contact. Based off of your individual dog, she allowed you to hold her paw for quite a while. All I could say is really just kind of play with what kind of textures or what kind of movements around her paw pads is she comfortable with, to see exactly how ticklish she is.
Please see part 2 to this, where we go into depth about cooperative care and nail trims with a dremel. Part 2 is all about making contact with the nail. Good girl.